Thank you, members. It's 2 o'clock. If we'd like to start the meeting, please. First item on the agenda is election of chairman. Can I have nominations for chairman, please? Any other nominations?
I'll second it.
Yeah, seconded. No other nominations. Can we have a show of hands for Mr. White? That's carried. Mr. White, would you like to take the chair, please?
Yes, I'm happy to accept. Thank you very much for your continuing confidence. So let's move on to the business of the meeting. The next item is the appointment of a vice chairman. Do we have a nomination for that, please?
Councillor Jim Higginson.
Councillor Higginson's been nominated. Do we need a second? Yes, second from Councillor Strong. Votes for and against. Sorry, I assume there weren't any other nominations, so that's fine. Okay, so Councillor Higginson is now our Vice Chairman. Apologies for absence, please.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Hayward and Peter Clark.
Chairman,
Thank you very much.
Councillor Phil Murphy and Councillor Dimitri Petruni both undertaking interviews at this moment in time. They might be in sometime during the meeting, depends how the process goes.
Thank you very much. Now, the next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Now, we normally take these as they arise through the meeting, but can I just say at this point, we don't really want anyone to declare an interest in regard to item 11. I'll explain why in a little bit more detail later on, but not to make a declaration at this point. Thank you. Public open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of the committee. There doesn't seem to be anyone in the public gallery, so we'll move on. And we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any comments or corrections on the minutes of the previous meeting?
Move them, Chairman.
That's fine with me as long as no one has any points they want to raise. Right, we'll accept that then. Thank you very much. Now then. Sorry, because of the excitement of the election, I've just lost my web page, but I'm back now. Okay, so we're on to the action list from the previous meeting. So far as the first one on the list is concerned, relating to the progress report on unsatisfactory audit opinions, it's not actually an immediate item for action. I believe that this is just a statement from internal audit that these items will be followed up in due course. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, Chairman, yeah. And be reported back to Audit Committee on the 6-monthly cycle when we report unsatisfactory opinions.
Now, the next item on the action list, early departures and vacant posts. I think the action for Peter Davis here was actually to put the People Services annual report to the Audit Committee in future meetings. That was the action. Since then, he supplied us with some more information on early departures, which I think was asked for during the meeting, and I think members have received that. Okay, thank you. The Audit Committee annual report will be presented to the Council. I believe it's going to be on the 16th of June, and I shall be doing that. Now, on to the issue raised by members of the public regarding Chepstow School. You will have seen the draft letter which I produced, which I intend to have sent to Mr. Rees. I received only one or two people making any comments at all on it. What I would like the committee to agree with me now is that we send the letter as drafted. And Councillor Easton wishes to make a point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I made a long response to you. I think that I'd like to discuss that response, and at the end of the day, the committee make the decision on what they decide is the right way to go. But would you let me? You've obviously read the email. You know the points I've been making. Would you let me to evaluate them with the committee, or?
Well, my feeling on this was that we needed to have, if we were to discuss the points you were raising, we needed to have another agenda item with the proper officers present.
Right.
Kelly Byrne, possibly Peter Davis present. I don't mind doing that if that is the will of the committee. Kelly Byrne and Peter Davis have both been here before with this information, so they could have been questioned on it then. But if you want to put a motion on notice that we would come back to this issue, then that's up to you. But I don't think that we can discuss those points further in this particular meeting at the moment. I don't know if anyone objects to that.
I accept your position as chairman in the decision on that. Although you did ask for comments, I made those comments. Yes, it may be better to take it to another discussion, another level, but I do feel a little disappointed that that should be the case, because it was of this committee that the points were made. But fine, you're the chair. I'll accept your ruling, and I'll speak to you later about the position. There's 5 points I made to you, and I felt they were quite serious points, or potentially serious points, that I needed clarifying in my own mind for us to move forward in terms of school governance and other select committees within the authority.
Councillor Prosser.
Yes, Chair. I mean, I haven't got the copies of the letters in front of me, but I did read it all, and I was quite happy with the response as I saw it. Now, if there are reservations with my colleague, then I don't know what those are, obviously, but I would have hoped that yourself as chair and my colleague could discuss the issues to see if it is necessary to debate them again. I was quite happy with the last response, but obviously I wait to see what the comments are, because I don't know.
I think it's very reasonable that I should discuss it further with Councillor Easton, and I resolve to do that immediately after this meeting, if that's all right with everybody. Yes, Councillor Higgins.
That being the case, Mr. Chairman, and if there are issues in there which I think that we may need knowledge of, then it'd have to be agended for another meeting. Because I mean, I wouldn't know what the content of the letter is, or the points raised in that sense. So I think if it's a matter, it could be a matter for discussion for the whole committee. That's the point I'm making. And I think that's where Councillor Prosser is coming from.
Let me just recap the situation that's led up to this letter. Kelly Byrne provided us with a detailed account responding to the issues raised by Mr. Rees. We had a chance to discuss those with officials present. Then at the last meeting, I outlined a strategy for responding to Mr. Rees, and the committee agreed that we should do that by correspondence after the committee. What Councillor Easton has raised is some fundamental objections to that information that was provided by officials, in that it is inadequate and so on. Knowing that we already had a chance to discuss these things and the committee had come to a view on it, what I wanted now from the committee really is, just so I know the committee agrees that the letter as drafted can be sent out. I feel that what Councillor Easton wants to do is revisit the whole issue and have a further debate. And I don't think there's anything to stop us doing that, but I think we'd have to call officials in and do it properly. Yes, Councillor Easton.
I don't feel that I want to open the debate completely. I just want to look at the results of where we go from this particular debate, where it took us, and some fundamental questions for the future and for other select committees. That's really it. So I'm happy to discuss it with you afterwards and take your judgment on whether it should be taken forward in another meeting. And yes, I'm quite happy to share it with other members at the appropriate time when you feel fit.
Well, I would very much like to send the letter as it is.
Okay.
I don't think it precludes further discussion about this issue or any other issue. I think
fine.
it can be reopened at any time.
It's fine by me. Okay.
Can I, sorry, Councillor Prosser. Councillor Edwards. Can I have a second? In favour? I've got 5 in favour
I'm going to abstain if you like.
and 1 abstention. Thank you very much. We'll now send that letter out, Secretary, since I sent it on to you. Okay,
Chair.
thank you.
Chair, notwithstanding that, I think it would be useful if members did see a copy of the comments for our digestion.
Yeah, fine, no problem. I'll let the chairman decide when that's to be done, all right?
Well, it's absolutely up to Councillor Eason if he wants to send his comments to the other members of the committee. It's not
Well,
for
the
me
reason
to
why I
say.
sent it to you was you declared written in your letter to us to keep these confidential. You didn't want to spread around the world, and so I kept it just to you at that instance. That's why I kept it just to you.
That's a very good point. That in as much as in the drafting of the letters, the situation might have, changed. I didn't want any of that information being published at that time. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Now then. Also in the minutes, there were 2 more issues noted which have not been flagged as action points, so I just thought I'd mention them. In consideration of the draft annual governance statement, Mr. Watson agreed to investigate where a risk remains from a previous year, whether there was a failure in the previous year to mitigate that risk, I think is the implication. And also in consideration of the same document, why were the 23 FOI requests not responded to in 20 days? Now, does Mr. Watson have anything on these, or does he think the drafting points are the final statement?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got some information from officers with regards to the first issue regarding the risk. The officer has reported back there is a table within the annual governance statement which talks about risk, whether it's a low, medium or high risk, pre-mitigation and post-mitigation. And I think the query was around how come the risk could be medium in the second year if after mitigation in year 1 it was a low risk. The officers got back to me and said that they take into account the risk of that particular issue without mitigation on a year-by-year basis, and then if the mitigation has been successful, that is categorised within the second column, which is post-mitigation. So there's some slight confusion there, but it's the way in which they interpret what that risk is per item within that particular table.
Thank you.
And secondly, on the FOIs, okay, we reported, again within the annual governance statement, that 98% of our FOI requests had been responded to within the expected timescale of 20 days. The ICO acceptable standard is 85%, so we were well in excess of that. The question was around why the others hadn't been responded to within those timescales. There were a number of reasons, more complicated and required input from various departments across the authority. There may well have been pressures on staff holding that particular information about current workloads. There was sickness and leave absence where the person holding that information was unavailable for that period of time. And from time to time, there will be human error. And the officers also provided me with some further information about 10 of those requests were dealt with within 60% of the timescales. Sorry, 60% of the requests were dealt with in 10 days. 70% of requests were dealt with within 12 days. 80% were dealt with within 15 days. 85% were dealt with within 17 days. 90% dealt with within 19 days, and then 95% dealt with within 20 days. So it does show the authority in a very good position in responding to FOI requests, and is better than most authorities in Wales.
Any comments or observations? Yes, Councillor Prosser.
I think that gives us confidence in the process, Chair. I did read through the reports and for each year and watching the trends, as you say. But from what you're saying, it's well within the bounds of soundness for the authority. So yeah, we receive.
Okay, thank you very much for that extra information. So the next item on the agenda then is the revised annual government statement. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Wathen to introduce it.
Thank you, Chairman. Members would have seen a draft version of this previously at Audit Committee, and this is just an update of that version. It is quite a comprehensive document, runs through many pages, and it will accompany the draft accounts when they're submitted for external audit at the end of June. I've taken on board the comments made by Audit Committee previously and updated the annual governance statement. I've updated various tables to include data for 15-16 where that was available. What I do need to do is just go through it one more time to make sure there's clarity in what information is reported, to make sure that there are relevant year-on-year comparisons, or where the latest information or data is available, that is actually noted within the document, because in some areas there's a lack of clarity. So I will give a commitment to members. I'll go through that before it goes through to the external auditors with the draft accounts, but happy to take any questions today, Chairman, to update it even further.
Councillor Prosser.
Yes, Chair. I mean, it's a heavy read. That's the way I saw it. I started reading through and I thought, oh, this is hard work, you know. So I was looking for the summary. You know, I like to go to the summary first and work backwards. And so when it is presented, I assume there will be an over-guiding summary of the conclusions. In other words, doing a good job, doing a bad job, except for whatever.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. There's no summary. There hasn't been a summary before within the annual governance statement. It's a fairly standard framework which is used by other local authorities. It's set and designed to deal with the responses of 6 principles of governance from SOLIS and SIPFA. So the framework doesn't lend itself to providing a summary because it's quite documented, quite comprehensive, sorry. But I would look to try and do that for the purposes of the Audit Committee.
Just as guidance, Chair. I mean, I looked through all of, they give the various levels of we did this in this way, that percentage, etc., that amount of time, blah, 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 and all the other principles that were in there. And I thought, well, sometimes you say to yourself, well, was that good or bad? You know, yeah, I haven't got an overriding comment saying, well, yeah, okay, we had certain things, but that was good or that wasn't so good. So it's just that sort of feel I didn't get out of it, that's all. It's just me, perhaps I'm not with it.
Any other questions or observations? Councillor Easton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to find in your report, bullet point 32, that Monmouthshire County Council has a high level of spend with small and medium enterprises in our locality. And I hope that this trend continues, because that is good for our locality and the County of Monmouthshire and maybe just surrounds as well.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Higgins.
I mean, I picked up one about the quality of services, and the fact is we are higher than the Welsh Government average, the Welsh National Government average, and that's a good sign.
Thank you. Well, we have seen this report in draft before, and there'll be a final version accompanying the county accounts, I believe. So if there are no further comments or observations on the report, I'd like to thank the Chief Internal Auditor for producing it for us to check over now. Okay, then I'm going to move on. The next agenda item, I've actually been asked to reverse 9 and 10. So the next agenda item I'm going to take is going to be the internal annual audit report 2015-16. So back to Mr. Wathen again.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This is one of the key reports I bring to the Audit Committee on an annual basis, which is the annual audit report, slightly different from your Audit Committee annual report. And this basically gives an opportunity for me to give an overall opinion on the adequacy of the internal control environment, governance arrangement and risk management processes within the authority, based on the work that we've undertaken in 2015-16, and hopefully gives members assurance that there are proper controls in place to protect public money within Monmouthshire. So the overall summary is that we've issued 28 audit opinions in 2015-16, and I'm given an overall opinion of reasonable, which indicates that the systems were well controlled, although we did identify some risks which needed to be addressed during the course of our work. Reassuringly, there were no unsound audit opinions, although there were some unsatisfactories, and those have been reported to you during the course of the year. In terms of performance of the team, we achieved 74% of our agreed audit plan in 2015-16 against a target of 80%. And I'll come on to the reasons for that in a moment. So those are the overarching headlines for the report. In terms of the provision of the report, I've got a duty to report to Audit Committee, provide an annual report, provide an annual opinion, which is based on the public sector internal audit standards and the requirements within those. So our team work within those guidelines in a professional capacity. As part of that process, I need to bring to your attention any concerns we have with any work that we undertake, present a summary of the audit work which we've undertaken during the year, any issues concerning the annual governance statement, any issues regarding planned and unplanned work, and comment on the compliance within the authority, which hopefully this report encompasses, and I've reported to you on a quarterly basis throughout the year. I've provided 6 monthly updates on unsatisfactories, and you've seen the governance statement before you this afternoon. So the overall opinion is reasonable, as I mentioned, and if I can refer members to paragraph 2.4, which is page 47 of your packs. There's a table there which gives an opinion from very good down to unsound over a number of years, just to give you a year-on-year comparison to see how well the authority is doing. And from that table, we can see that the opinion is fairly static over the last few years, and the number of opinions has been pretty much the same, although there was a slight dip in 13-14 due to the resources within the team. So hopefully that will give you assurance as members that things are working well within Monmouthshire, that there are appropriate controls in place, and where we have unsatisfactory audits, then action and recommendations are implemented to make sure that there are improvements in those particular services. It's the manager's responsibility to ensure that the internal controls are appropriate and maintained. It's our responsibility to check on that to make sure that there is compliance. Also, we need to make sure there's compliance with the Council's financial regulations and contract procedure rules in terms of spend and financial awareness, sound financial management within the particular services. Excuse me. From time to time, we do get involved in unplanned work where heads of service or senior managers ask us to do additional work to that agreed, and that is noted in the report in the appendix. And we also get involved with fraud and special investigation work. Again, that will be a separate report coming to you later today. But in terms of unplanned work, that's listed at paragraph 6.2, just to give members an indication of what other work we get involved with over and above that is planned and agreed. As a team, we encourage our staff to train to the best of their ability, and we support staff development and staff training. We're offering professional development training currently with several members of our team, and we also support the Welsh Chief Auditors Group training programme and send our staff on those particular sessions and seminars as and when they arise. In terms of the detail of the work, I'll come on to that in a moment because that is in the appendix, but in terms of the team's performance, as mentioned, we've achieved 74% of the agreed plan, agreed by Audit Committee last June. 65% was achieved in the previous year, so we've had an improvement in the coverage of audit work we've done in 15-16. Not all the jobs we get involved with warrant an audit opinion, and that's why we've only got 28 audit opinions, because we get involved with work like the annual governance statement, National Fraud Initiative, and we audit the performance indicators of the authority before they're sent out externally. In terms of getting work done within planned time, that's reasonably low. That's 20%, which seems a bit stark to start with, but that we may have missed a job by a day, we may have missed it by a much bigger margin than that. But the way the plan is constructed is based on a number of days per job. We allocate a number of days per job. If we overrun for whatever reason, then that means that PI is going to be missed. So there's an emphasis from audit management within the team, and the staff are well aware that they need to do the jobs within the allocated timescales. But if we come across issues which we feel need addressing, then it's a judgment call on that particular job as to whether we extend the audit from the original plan to make sure that all the issues are covered, and therefore that has an impact on doing that job in time. Reassuringly though, when we do identify issues and we make recommendations of improvement, 97% of those recommendations were accepted by management, and they agreed to implement certain action to improve their internal control environment. What we'll be doing in 16-17 is following that up a bit further to making sure that, as well as agreeing those recommendations, managers have actually implemented those recommendations to demonstrate improvement in their internal control environment. One of our key tasks is getting audit reports out in a timely manner. Final reports were sent out within 22 days. 16 represents the number of days in the previous year in brackets. So we had a slightly poorer performance than the previous year. And getting draft reports out, that was in excess of where we'd like to be. That took us 75 days. Number of reasons for that, mainly resources on the ground. We didn't have a full complement of staff during the year. We're involved in quite some complicated and sensitive special investigations, which takes us out of the timescales for getting back to our staff in terms of reviews and getting back to service managers with their draft reports. So it's something we'll be working on in 16-17 to try and improve. So if I could refer members to Appendix A, which is page 51. That first table shows the audit opinions which we used in 15-16. As part of 15-16 processes and improvement, we've reformatted our audit report, and we've got a different way of reporting to service managers, and we were piloting new opinions, which are shown in the second table. There were 3 audit opinions, and we were trying to gain a level of assurance which we could give to that particular service manager on the adequacy of their internal control environment. And they're colour-coded, red being not so good and improvements needed immediately. If we move on to the next table, which is on the next page, what I've included in the report are opinions to be used in 16-17 moving forward. So we've taken on board feedback from operational managers, and they felt it would be fairer to them to have 4 audit opinions, not 3, and we've reflected that, and we'll be using that moving forward in 16-17. In terms of the detail of the work we've undertaken, I've provided the summary at Appendix B in terms of the service areas and an overall opinion for the service areas, again over a number of years, hopefully to show some trends. The detail of the work we've undertaken is then shown on page 55 onwards, where we've identified individual jobs, the risk rating, which we identified in the audit plan, the overall opinion, whether it was good, reasonable or unsatisfactory, and whether at year end it was final or in draft. Moving on to Appendix D, that is a summary table of our performance indicators, a complete suite of indicators with an annual target highlighted. For 15-16 actual is the far right column, and then a year-on-year comparison. I think that concludes what I wanted to say, Chairman. I'm happy to take any questions.
Over to the floor then. Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the chart that you indicated on page, just flicking back to it now, to do with unsatisfactory, page 47, to do with unsatisfactory reports. We've got in 2015-16 an indication that there are 3 unsatisfactory reports, and in the previous year there were 6. Of those 3 unsatisfactory reports for 2015-16, did they relate to the same offices or departments as the previous year, or is it 3 different departments or offices? In other words, are they still unsatisfactory after a year?
Okay, thanks, Chairman. In terms of the 3 that were unsatisfactory in 15-16, they'll be identified in the appendix, and they are procurement cards, mega primary, and the markets. They would be different from the ones we've looked at in previous years. That information will be brought forward in our 6-monthly update of unsatisfactory audit opinions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Eason.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Jordan has asked one of the questions I've got to ask, but the second part is you've identified that you've now got a full complement of staff, but during which should help you through your process the next year. But during the last year, you've done you've done 5 special investigations, but you don't say how many investigations you carried out, which were of I'm trying to find the page here of fraud and serious matters, which may be. Oh, you got it. During the year, the section that took unplanned or special work, you've named 5 special unplanned jobs, but you haven't identified whether you've had any investigations of suspected fraud, irregularities, or non-compliance. Is there a reason for that?
No reason. I think in the report we've identified that we were involved in special investigations. I think we were involved in about 8 special investigations. They weren't listed in the report, no apparent reason. But I just need to bear in mind confidentiality when we're dealing with special investigations, because some might be ongoing, some impact on individuals, and there's the outcome of some of our special investigations could be it's an issue between the management and the individual employee in terms of if any sanctions have been issued as a result. But no reason why we haven't listed those in this report.
So would any of those on completion be coming back to this committee or this audit committee? This dealt with on item 11. Can we leave item 11? Okay, fine. Yeah, it's on agenda item 11.
Yeah, I think item 11 addresses the issue that you've raised. Yeah. Any Anyone else want to make a point or ask a question of the internal auditor? Councillor Prosser.
Yes, not a question really, it's an observation. I mean, the authority's been through 2 years of transformation, I think, really, if not more than 2 years. And so we've had a lot of posts changing, personnel moving about, and redundancies and all those sorts of things. And that's a breeding ground sometimes for problems to slip through, you know. And from what I'm seeing on the records you got there, we seem to have quelled any storm that might be coming, and I think it's a good reflection. And so, yeah, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or observations? Yes, Councillor Edwards. Can you turn your microphone on, please, Councillor Edwards?
On page 39, you spent 8 days up in the Mardio, by the look of it. Were there any problems arising there?
Sorry, Chairman, can you
Yes,
tell
can
me
you
exactly where you
tell
are,
you which
please?
page it is or what paragraph it
Oh,
is?
it's page 39.
On, I think that's possibly on
Page-
the printed version rather than the ones we've got.
Yeah, sorry.
Have you got a paragraph number or something like that?
Directorate is Social Care, Health and Safeguarding. Does that mean anything?
43 on the...
Oh, God. Is that 43 on the iPad, is it? Is it top paragraph integrated adult services?
Chair, I think the councillor may be looking at the appendix to the audit plan report, which we haven't got
Yeah.
on to yet.
You haven't come to, sorry.
Yeah. I realise that now, I didn't before. Yeah. Okay, so we're continuing to consider the internal audit annual report for 2015-16. Any other questions or observations for Mr. Wathen? In which case, I'd like to thank the Chief Internal Auditor for providing us with his annual report.
Thank you, Chairman.
The next item on the agenda then is going to be item 9, which is the Internal Audit 2016-17 plan. So over to Mr. Wathen again.
Thank you, Chairman. Members have now heard of what we did in 15-16, and now it's time to tell you what we intend doing for 16-17. Again, another important document which we bring to the attention of Audit Committee, and it's an annual document, an annual plan, so most members have seen the format of this previously. As one of the members has already mentioned, we now have a full complement of staff, so we plan the work accordingly. We have a limited number of audit days to divide up all the jobs we intend doing. We always start off with a long list of jobs which we would like to do, and we try and prioritise those in terms of a risk assessment, in terms of high, medium or low. And then we have discussions with heads of service and service managers to prioritise that workload, and then we whittle that down even further to match that with the resources we have available on the day. So we always plan to do 100% of the work, even though our targets say that we're going to hit around, or we hope to achieve about 80% of the plan. Because we know from past experience, very few audit teams within Wales actually achieve 100% of their plan. And it's not an exact science, as hopefully I've explained before, but the number of days and overruns. So this is the plan. This is where we've allocated our time for 16-17. It's based on a total of 917 days allocated across various service areas and on individual jobs, and will be undertaken by 5.4 full-time equivalents, which is our full complement of staff within the audit team. It does also include 116 days of special investigation work, which is unknown at this stage, but we've got to try and plan for that as best we can. That could potentially overrun, and that could potentially have an impact on our ability to deliver all of the plan as well. The best thing I can do, Chairman, is probably go straight to the appendix, which is on page 33. I've outlined a summary, where we spent the time last year, where we intend spending the time 16-17 over the various directorates, and then more detailed in terms of the jobs which we specifically want to undertake. And just to give members a flavour of what's going on, in the table on page 34, headed up Internal Audit Plan 2016-17, there's a list of service areas and there's a description of jobs. There may not be descriptions for everything, and there may not be numbers corresponding to those descriptions. That's because we can't do everything we would like to do in that particular area in 1 year because of our resources we have in the team. So, for example, the first number you come to on that table relates to licensing, which is within community protection. We've identified it as a low risk, but we want to include it within our audit plan for 16-17 because we haven't covered that for a number of years, that particular area, and we've allocated 10 days in which to do that particular audit by our staff. We've also included registrars. We feel as though that's a medium risk to the authority. Again, 10 days allocated for that particular review. As we go through the plan, we've incorporated some time for follow-up of audit recommendations, which is, as I explained earlier, is the implementation of recommendations to make sure managers have actually done something about the issues we've identified. As part of added value to the authority, we give advice on ensuring that there's sound financial management throughout the whole services and compliance with council policy, our own financial regulations and contract procedure rules. So that gives a total then of number of days allocated for that particular directorate being democracy and regulatory services. Then it flows through then directorate, chief execs within finance, key areas we're going to cover within accountancy, key financial systems we're going to cover, and whether we feel it's a high, medium or low risk. Financial support teams, finalisation of 2015-16 audits, where the report was at draft as at the 31st of March, we now need to finalise that report. So most of those have been done, and I'll be reporting back on Q1 how we've got on with the finalisation. Getting follow-up of recommendations and then audit advice. That flows through then through to operations, policy and engagement, young people, children, young people, where we're looking at schools, enterprise directorate, covering quite a few areas in the enterprise area, social care and health and safeguarding, again quite a few reviews covered within that particular area, and then at the end a list of other involvements where the team is involved, but it's a necessity we do get involved. They tend to be cross-cutting across service areas. We get involved with the NFI initiative and, as you can see, the the annual governance statement. So that's a whistle-stop tour of where we're going to spend our time in 16-17, Chairman, allocated over our full audit team and hopefully given coverage across most of the service areas to give you as an audit committee assurance on the internal control environment, governance arrangements and risk management processes. Happy to take questions, Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I apologise to Andrew that I jumped the gun and went to this particular report. But I am interested in, and I hope that sometime during the year we will get a report back on the residential care of Marley Park. I notice you've allotted yourself 8 days to do the job there. I may be able, you may like to interview me at some time. You know, I've had quite a bit of experience over this last 4 or 5 months of various aspects of health, and Marley Park does come into it.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, if it's in the plan with a number of days, then we'll certainly be looking at it. The report won't actually come back to the Audit Committee. The report goes to the Service Manager, but the opinion will come back to Audit Committee. And if there are any concerns, then that'll be reported back to the Audit Committee as well. And we'll probably take up your offer there, Councillor. Thanks.
Any other comments or observations on the 2016 plan for internal audit?
Can I move with thanks and once again? Very detailed report to be given.
Councillor Edwards has moved a motion of thanks for this very detailed report. And I second that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the item 11, update on special investigations. Now, there's potentially some sensitive matters here hidden beneath the report itself. There's a potential danger, I think, of identifying individuals or organisations, which I don't think we should be doing, which is why I asked you not to declare an interest at all. But bearing all that in mind, I'm going to hand over again to Mr. Wathen, who's got a lot to do today, to introduce this report on special investigations.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. This report's coming to Audit Committee on the back of information requested from Audit Committee some time ago on the quarterly reports that...
Chairman, could I interrupt, please?
Yes?
Is this matter being live streamed? Is this committee being live streamed?
Yes, we are being live streamed.
It might be
In that,
appropriate.
in that case,
I agree.
shouldn't we apply to exclude the press and public?
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
in the questioning of the officer, it may well be revealed some sensitive information that is available. I don't know.
Because the paper has already been published as part of the public pack that's available, I didn't see that the paper itself needed to be restricted. However, if it is believed that there is a potential danger here, I was hoping people would avoid it, but if there is believed to be a potential danger here, that you might be moving into areas which shouldn't be discussed in public, I don't know if anyone's got any advice on that.
Chair, I'm reading my report on the excluded page of ModGov. I don't know what, I haven't looked at the public page, but I got the restricted page of ModGov.
I think it's generally available, the paper. Yeah.
It is generally available.
Yeah.
Chair. It's not an exempt item.
No, it's not an exempt item. I was just asking people to exercise caution in, because what we're really talking about is we're discussing internal audit's performance.
It's generalisation rather than pinpointing things.
That's what we're trying to do. Yes, I just think that there is a danger if someone was to say, "Oh, I think this is X." Yes. Well, I think maybe I need to leave it to the head of internal audit's judgment as to whether to proceed on this, because we could take it again at a future meeting under you know, with press and public excluded. Can I make an order to do that now? Can I turn off the live stream as the chair of the committee?
Can I ask a question, if I may, Chairman?
Yes.
What does Andrew or David want to do with it? If they're going to go into the nitty-gritty of it, if I put it that way, rather than the generalisation, yes, you know, it can't be live streamed. But if it's not the intention to go into it, then there's no reason why if you take it as a generalisation without going into it individually, then I don't see any problem why we can't continue as we are.
Well, I think I'm going to suggest that we turn off the live stream, if that's possible.
I think as a committee you can agree to go into committee.
Yes.
It's just I think Councillor Higginson made a valid point. It depends really whether you're going to go into issues that will be exempt. If you speak as on general issues, then the matter can be dealt with as an open item. But it's really up to the committee to decide how you're going to proceed with it.
Chairman, can I come back? If that's the case, and if you're going to not live stream a particular issue, I think the best thing to do with that is leave it to the end item on the agenda, and you know, let everything live stream up until that in committee process. And if I put it that way.
Councillor Prosser.
Yes, Chair. Okay, delicate situation. If the monitoring officer was here, I'd ask the monitoring officer for advice. And what he would probably say is, if there is a danger of names of individuals being released through investigation and questioning process, then he would be minded to go to committee. If it is purely a statement where no individuals will be identified or schools, etc., then you could continue. And that is the decision I would suggest. So I don't know how deep the questions are going to be. Perhaps Mr. Wathen could advise us whether there is any danger of him releasing any information which would be to that end if we question, or whether he would just refuse to answer the question, in which case we can stay as we are. But if there is a danger that we will identify to answer questions, then we need to go into committee.
I don't know if you want to respond to that, Andrew, but I have a thought on that matter as well. Shall I do mine first? One of the issues in statistics is the problem of identifying individuals, and people sometimes think rather naively, if you take the name off or take the date of birth off, that you won't identify the individual. But if you know where someone lives and what they do, then it very often does identify that individual, and I think we're in that area, to be honest. Can I go into committee now, or do I have to make notice of it in future? I can propose to go into committee now. Well, what I will propose is that we go into committee after we've discussed the work programme for this committee, which is the final item on the agenda, and then we'll be in committee after that. How's that? Okay. Well, I'll move it. Can I have a second?
Yeah, that was my suggestion. Leave it till last.
Yes. And can I have votes for? Yes and against. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into committee on this item after we've discussed the work programme. The work programme is given at the end of the pack. Any comments or observations on the work programme? If not, I'd like to thank officers for putting this together, and I'm now going to suggest that we formally go into committee with press and public excluded.
Second.
Thank you.
If you give me a couple of minutes,
Yeah.
Chair, to knock that off, I'll